Can you say hard hats, folks? Hard hats, lunch pails, steel-toe boots?
Anything short of a championship this year is a failure.
Look at this boomer right here.
You've just got so much talent here.
Somebody said we need to apologize for Jalen.
Can I quote it, John? What are we apologizing for? What did we say? What did we do?
Hey, Barry Manning here. Welcome to a Thursday edition of the Garden Report. We got Celtics, we got Bulls later tonight as the NBA schedule finally gets rolling again after this massive layoff here with the Cup. But a little bit to talk about, a little bit going on. We're welcoming in Michael Pina from The Ringer. Wrote a great story about the Rockets, writes a lot of great stories over at The Ringer. And that's a team I've been wanting to catch up on, check in on. Michael, obviously the Celtics haven't been able to see them yet. They will actually early next month. But, of course, Ime Udoka's over there doing his thing. They've been off to a great start this year. They were in this in-season tournament NBA Cup thing and beat the Warriors for the first time in like 10 years. So I love what they're doing. I love what Udoka did in Boston. And it's pretty cool, as you described in the piece there, that they're doing a lot of the same things defensively that he was doing in Boston to be able to build what's been the second best defense in the league so far behind Oklahoma City.
Yeah, I think Houston might be my favorite team to watch this season still. Love their defensive intensity. Love, as you said, the playing style on that side of the ball that Ime Udoka implemented in Boston, kind of taking that to Houston with him. And you know, it's really fascinating how he had Robert Williams, who's one of the most athletic, when healthy, big man, shot blocking, defensive presences in basketball as the roamer, which was kind of a little, not unprecedented, but a little revolutionary in how often that they used him like that, you know, having him guard non-shooters as opposed to opposing big men. And to implement it with Alperen Şengün, who is not known as a plus defender at all, but having him not guard pick and rolls in a traditional sense has really helped him on the defensive end. And then just, you know, sprinkling in a ton of switches, obviously, with some of the best on-ball defenders in basketball, some of the smartest help defenders in basketball, a lot of athleticism, a lot of toughness. A lot of physicality. So I just love watching them. Obviously, offensively, it's a totally different story right now. And that's kind of the area that they really need to get better at if they ever want to contend with this core. But defensively, they're right there. And as you mentioned, their performance against the Golden State Warriors, I thought was really standout. I don't know how many 24-second shot clock violations they forced, but it was a lot. And in the first half, they're just kind of manically forcing all these turnovers. So I love watching them play. And I think Ime Udoka has a case for Coach of the Year right now.
Yeah, and I miss it a little bit. Obviously, the Celtics have been great to watch the last 2 years. They've changed their style, but have remained great defensively in their own way. But their style has been a little bit more analytical, like take away the threes, drop back to the basket, take that away, let other teams shoot mid-rangers, and we're just going to play the percentages a little bit there. And there's still some elements of that switching. There's still some stuff left behind from what Ime established that year. But it's been, you know, not to knock it down or discredit or anything like that, but it is a little bit more of a passive style, whereas when Ime was running the defense here and you're seeing it in Houston, it's forceful. You're creating havoc. You're forcing turnovers. They were one of the highest or best teams at forcing turnovers that year in 2022. Mm-hmm. And you're seeing that now with Houston. It's just the aggressiveness of the switching, how physical it is. I know you noted in the piece that they're fouling a lot too out there. So it's a fun style to watch, especially if you love defensive basketball. But on the other hand, as you mentioned there, just like with that Boston team in 2022 that went through massive offensive lapses at times, even with probably better overall personnel on that end, this Houston team's going to have to figure it out somehow on that end if they want to be a legitimate contender here. And I think they're within striking distance of doing that, but you're going to need more than 25, 30 games to see if that'll actually sustain itself.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because obviously in Houston, Ime Udoka is a believer in numbers and math. And one of the big reasons why you want to switch as often as he does is you want to take away 3-point shots. And they're really good at that. Getting back in transition is not necessarily, well, I think everything's analytics, to be honest, in a sense, but he wants to get back in transition also. And that's kind of been a tenet of Joe Mazzulla, his defensive philosophy. You want to be great in transition. You want to keep the floor balanced, which is one of the benefits, as we saw last season, of how they play offense. You shoot a ton of threes, you're able to get back, or there's a higher likelihood you'll be able to get back and set up in the half court. So there are definitely similarities there for sure. And, I think like the personnel is also just so, I mentioned Kristaps Porzingis is obviously a much better shot blocker than Alperen Şengün is. But if you look at just the athleticism on the wings and the versatility, Jabari Smith versus Jaylen Brown, or Amen Thompson versus Drew Holiday, there's just a lot of similarities there too that I like to see.
Yeah, so you got to talk to him for this piece. Obviously talked to him a lot here in Boston. The one thing I got, and that I think, you've gathered in Houston since he took over there, is he wants to win. Like, I think he at his core wants to accelerate this thing, be able to go out there and contend for a championship as soon as possible. But just the reality of the situation a year ago with that young team, with what they were coming off of in the previous era with Silas and all those losing seasons, and, even the ownership's position of where they were at that point, like, you're just going to take a year there, feel things out. They had a great season a year ago compared to the previous year, but this year you have this chance. And I know the messaging out of that team continues to be, we want to see what it's going to be like this year with this team through a course of a full season into a playoff run, and then make decisions from there. But when you get off to this start, when you maybe have this opportunity to catch lightning in a bottle and go on a big run here, how much do you feel like Ime does want to, bring in a veteran, make a move, consolidate this thing a little bit, and actually make themselves a little bit more of a legitimate contender, versus see what you have here, continue to invest and allow these young guys to grow, let Green and Şengün become the centerpiece together? Because that's obviously what they did in Boston, right? They had those two cornerstones. Right. They were patient with them. They built them up despite their flaws, and then it flourished eventually.
Yeah, I don't know if they're one player away. Actually, let me take that back, because I think if this team added Kevin Durant to it, that they could go to the finals, depending on who you give out in a hypothetical trade like that. If you added a Devin Booker-esque scorer, and these two are, not coincidentally being named by me, because there's been reports and rumors, and the fact that Houston traded for all of Phoenix's, or acquired Phoenix's future draft capital, leads one to believe that they are targeting these players at some point down the line. I don't think that's necessarily realistic, but I just think the offense right now is not so far gone, because they have a clear offensive identity. They crash the offensive glass really well. They create a ton of second chance opportunities. They're above league average in offensive rating, I believe, despite ranking 29th or 30th in effective field goal percentage. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but they don't hit shots. That's a thing that is not great for them, and they can't really space the floor all that well. So if you were to add, the best player who's available seemingly right now is Jimmy Butler. And I think that for all of Ime Udoka's desire to win right now, pending what you would have to give up to get Jimmy, and maybe that is no one in your young core, maybe you can get him for draft capital and, Dylan Brooks and some other salary. I think that you'd consider that if you were Houston. I don't think Miami would do a trade like that, to be clear. But even if you add Jimmy Butler, I just don't know if you have enough offensively to win 4 playoff series, or 3, even just 3 playoff series in the Western Conference. It's going to be really difficult to do so while maintaining your defensive identity. So maybe I'm being too pessimistic about the offense right now, and maybe you're more on track with what they can be. I just think like offensively, it's you have to score efficiently. Defense is really important, but you also have to score efficiently in the playoffs to win in today's NBA. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, especially in that conference. Like if they were in the East, you could say, well, Boston's a whole different monster out there. But getting to the conference finals, getting to the highest level in that conference is an easier path, especially from the middle. If you're going to be a 3, 4, 5 seed there, than out west where you're going to be playing a conference finals caliber opponent pretty much every round.
Right.
There. So that's going to be the hardest part for them, and we'll see where they end up landing. 3 is a pretty good place to be for now. But one bad week and you're down to 7, 8, 9, maybe even 10. So things are going to change a lot out there. I want to get to the Butler stuff real quick. And I give a shout out to our sponsor here, Prize Picks. Great time heading into Christmas to head over there. Pick more or less on player projections, 2 or more players, and you get your team this weekend too. I know fantasy football is over for a lot of people, so you can go and make a team just for this weekend. Got Saturday games, Thursday nights coming up tonight as well. So if you're done with your season-long team, head over to Prize Picks and create a team just for this weekend. And on Christmas, they are doing a Nikola Jokic free square. All you got to get is 0.5 points from him. So all he needs to do is just get on the board, and you have one of your squares successful right there off the bat. Not that you need much help with Jokic night in and night out, but free Jokic square available by Christmas. It's an early Christmas special over on Prize Picks, so go check that out. And as always, use the code CLNS. Let them know we sent you. Play $5. Get $50 instantly over there on Prize Picks. That's Prize Picks. Run your game. So Butler, I didn't know what to make of this report right away. I guess it's the Heat, right? Saying, all right, let's hear what we can get from him. Let's see what's out there. Let's see who would even be interested in this. Because I don't think from Butler's perspective, and obviously he wants to get an extension here, right? And, figure out what he's going to be doing for the late stages of his career. But I don't think there's a ton of urgency on his end to get out of that situation in Miami. And I think that's been all the reporting here so far too. So, obviously it's been a little contentious between him and the franchise there, heading back to the way last year ended. The availability thing is just something you're going to have to weigh on both ends at this point. If you're Miami, like, is he available enough to be able to build the kind of regular season setup you want going into the playoffs? If you're another team, is he going to be available enough to make it worth what you're going to give up in this situation? So I do think beyond how hard it is to make trades now, there's big hurdles there. And you mentioned one of the Houston ones, like who are you going to give up? What kind of assets do you have there? What makes Miami actually move here? Because the biggest thing here is Miami has never embraced, at least in recent history here, a rebuild/reset, which is what this effectively would be here. You still have some pieces, probably prioritize bringing back something that can help you win a little bit right now. But I don't know. Is this something that could get done by the deadline? Him leaving Miami?
There's a lot of hurdles, and you named a whole bunch of them. I just wonder, like, who has the appetite for a 35-year-old who is, like, forget about all the CBA restrictions that really make this a difficult thing to pull off and limits the number of realistic candidates who could even trade for him. But who wants and I think Jimmy's really good still, but who wants a 35-year-old who is, he's played a ton of minutes, a lot of them with Tom Thibodeau as his head coach in Chicago and in Minnesota, and is injury prone or has missed a lot of time over the past couple of years. And most importantly is saying that he wants to opt out of his player option, his $52 million player option next season, wants to opt out of it and test free agency. So who wants to extend this guy or re-sign this guy or give stuff up to get him for what's essentially a half-season rental? I mean, you need to, if you're going to do that, you need to believe that you are a contender or that he pushes you over the top. You need to be really confident in that. And I just don't know how many teams that are in that position also have stuff that Miami would want. or yeah, just like the mechanisms to get something done. It's really a lot of hurdles. As I said, it's really difficult. And a team like Houston, they could pass the smell test here, but I just think that what Raphael Stone is saying, their GM, in terms of patience, in terms of we have a core that we like, let's grow, let's see what they can do in a playoff atmosphere, which is, it mirrors what Sam Presti said last season about the Oklahoma City Thunder, where at the trade deadline, they make the Gordon Hayward trade. Gordon doesn't really give them anything on the court, but they open up enough cap space then in doing that transaction to go out and sign Isaiah Hartenstein. They make the Alex Caruso trade, and now they are the favorites. So if you're Houston, I think that path is a little more agreeable to your long-term trajectory than we're going to give up let's give up like Reed Shepherd. I'm just throwing names out there, but like, let's give up someone who's really young and really good for Jimmy Butler. And then we lose in the first round. And it's like, okay, what do we do now? We just lost this guy in free agency. So I don't know. I think Jimmy wants to get paid, obviously. And that's kind of why his agent is reportedly going around and telling teams or trying to get, this little bidding war, saying the Brooklyn Nets are interested. The Phoenix Suns are interested. Dallas Mavericks. So it's really complicated. I personally would be a little surprised if Jimmy did actually get traded. That said, I also look at the Miami Heat and I'm like, where are you going? Like, what is the end game here if you're Miami? I don't think that they're even close to contending for a championship. They don't have a ton of tradable assets. Their attractive pieces have taken a step backward. Jaime Jaquez is been low key one of the more disappointing players in the entire NBA this season.
I don't know what's going on with Bam this year. I mean, he had a brutal game in Boston a week or two ago.
Bam has really
down.
Yeah, Bam has really struggled this season. Real slow start to the year. That's kind of, he's been a little bit better recently, but even in that Pistons game that they just went to overtime in, like, he just doesn't touch the ball in overtime, like, at all, really. So, and you just see the limitations of him offensively, where if his mid-range jumper isn't going or his paint floaters aren't going, okay, how efficient can you possibly be? I know he's taking more threes, but he's not really making a ton of them. So, big picture with them, I just don't know where they're going, what their direction is. And it's a really tricky spot for them to be in, despite, ironically, Tyler Hero having the best year by far of his career and finally looking like a potential all-star. But I just don't see it for them. And I don't really know where they go from here to get back to the level that they want to be at.
Yeah. And I think that makes this decision easy for them, even if there's not a ton of options out there for them to move on. You're going to have that player option at the end of the year anyway. And him opting into that, I don't think is a great situation for them either, even if it does just kick everything down the can a year. I think they're going to have to do it here. I think, and the fact that it's not a full rebuild, you still have Bam, you still have Hero, you still have some pieces, you're still Miami. Mm-hmm. You can attract guys. I think that makes it a little bit easier for them to go forward with that. And obviously, there's nothing here highlighting that they could go anywhere. So I think from their perspective, you do it. Now, who on the other side makes sense here? Phoenix, I don't think there's anything there that makes any sense. I know Dallas is in there. I don't think that makes any sense. Houston, I will circle back to that, and I want to talk about Golden State too right after, but it's tough because the Van Fleet contract I look at and I'm like, all right, that's like that 1-for-1, make the money work. You throw in all those Phoenix picks you have and just call it a day. And, maybe Miami likes having Van Fleet around to kind of, just hold up space for a couple of years. But I don't think Miami would do that. And I don't know how excited the Rockets would be to just move right on from Van Fleet. I know he hasn't played great, but he's been a big, culture guy, and they just signed him and all that. But that to me is like, all right, can you put Butler into the center of this offense, have him run it, hope he can recapture some old magic and have him power you through the playoffs. Like that would be the move, I think, that would accelerate everything if you're Houston. You only have to go into next year, whether it's the player option or he opts out. And then you have some cap space if you're them. But on the other side, Van Fleet signed 2 years, right? So I don't think Miami gets any cap space there. I don't think they're thrilled about bringing him back in that deal.
I think there's a team option for next season for him.
Okay, so that makes a little more sense then to me. Like that money works. I think it's like 42 and 48 or something like that for those two guys. And then, like, does Miami really need draft picks? No, but those could be pieces that they use to continue to shake things up going forward. That to me makes more sense than anything else that's out there, or like a Warriors, Kuminga, Wiggins picks thing. But Houston's gonna have to want to do it, and obviously, everything we've heard is that they want to be patient and they don't want to make a brass move like this. But if I'm them and the Heat would accept that, I would do it. Why not?
I like Van Fleet. I like him there. I think, you mentioned the cultural fit. I think that's spot on. I also think that he's like pretty important with how they defend. And I know that their offense is not spectacular, but his pick and roll play with Şengün is like kind of their staple. Like it's really important. It's their bread and butter.
And he's a 3-point shooter, unlike Butler.
Yeah. And he's just like, he's a really smart, heady player, and like removing a true, like, he's one of the last remaining, he's like last of a dying breed in a lot of ways in terms of just like steady hand floor generals. And I feel like that's just what this team specifically needs. I know Jimmy Butler can play make for sure, but he's not that type of player as Fred. And I'm not saying that Fred's as good as Jimmy, but it's just when you look at the context and you look at also we'd have to give up all these picks. And I think the picks for Houston are pretty valuable. Like I'd want to keep all my draft capital if I'm Houston right now, because I want to maximize my team. Like I want to pounce when Amen Thompson makes his jump and Tari Eason makes his jump and Şengün makes another jump. That's when and Reed Shepherd's in my rotation and he looks like Mark Price. Like that's really when I want to use my draft capital if I'm Houston. And so that's why I think being patient could be the smart play here. Because again, I just don't think that even if they have Jimmy Butler, I don't think that they're beating the Thunder in a 7-game series necessarily. I don't know if they're going to, if you list the names of the teams, like it's hard. It's like really, really hard in the West. Like the Timberwolves could be really good then, and we don't know what they'll do at the trade deadline. The Suns have KD, and
Dallas is still so dangerous.
Dallas made the finals last year, and they have Luka. Denver, everyone's down on Denver. Denver has the best player in the world, and like Jamal Murray over the last couple of times I've watched him has looked like Jamal Murray. So it's really tough. If I were them, I would really enjoy where I'm at right now as an organization and know that my future is really, really bright.
How about the Warriors? They want to put someone next to Steph. Kuminga is a restricted free agent. I don't know if Miami would like him or want to build around a guy like that, but it's a young piece that you could keep at the whole restricted free agency thing's another conversation. That's obviously part of the consideration there, but you would think you'd be able to keep him at a decent price this offseason. Wiggins, maybe he keeps you competitive if he can, give you some decent minutes there. Again, that's a contract I don't know if you really want to take back if you're Miami, but Warriors have some stuff to offer along with picks. And the fit, I think there's a little more dubious. He needs the ball in his hands a lot. And does that take it away from Steph? Does that take it away from Draymond and their whole thing that they do there? I have some questions about the fit there, but if you're in this late stage of Curry's career, you had that magic to start this year and it's starting to fade a little bit, and you have this roster that's built around depth more than the top end talent. Could consolidating there bring them closer to being a finals team again?
I think this makes a lot more sense, because I think that where they are as an organization, trying to maximize the end of Steph Curry's career should be your priority still. And there's a reason why they did not extend Jonathan Kuminga. coming into this season. There's a lot of reasons why I can imagine, but one of them is they want to keep him as a trade piece. And, dangling him, Wiggins, whatever. I think Schroeder can technically still be dealt and aggregated. I think his contract, I think that's a thing that they could do. And you have some other salaries here that you can move around. So, they started really hot. They had a defensive identity. They were playing like 13 guys in their rotation. That has, as everyone predicted, not been a sustainable way to win basketball games. Talking about the extended rotation in today's league, or basically ever. And so I do think a consolidation trade needs to happen. I think they need to be very aggressive. And, again, it comes back to what will Miami take back and accept. And frankly, I'm not the biggest Kuminga fan, like personally. I think like this is a little bit of a like, I'm going off the road here a little bit, but Kuminga reminds me in a lot of ways of like young Jaylen Brown in terms of not only playing style, but like stubbornness and wanting to play a certain way, and like believing that this is who you can be in the league in terms of like, I want to be DeMar DeRozan. Like, I don't care where the league is headed. I want to have the ball in my hands and I want to take a ton of shots, a lot of them in the mid range. I want to isolate, all that stuff. And I don't know, and I'm super athletic, all that sort of stuff. And I don't know if Kuminga like will ever get to be as good as Jaylen Brown has become. And so, and if he doesn't, that could be not disastrous, but not necessarily a winning player. So I think Kuminga, Wiggins, pick swaps. I don't know how many picks that they have that they can trade right now, Golden State. I don't think it's too many. But yeah, like that's a tough one. If Miami was willing to accept that type of package and you could get something done that fell in line with the CBA, I would do that if I was Golden State. And I don't care that much about the fit issues, because once I get into the playoffs, at the end of the day, I have Jimmy Butler on my team and I have Steph Curry on my team. Like, I don't care. Like, let's go. Let's see what happens. Let's like much better than my situation right now, where it's like Steph and who is my second option here? Andrew Wiggins, Buddy Hield. Like, yeah, we're in trouble. So I'm totally fine with Jimmy Butler coming aboard, almost regardless of the cost if I'm the Golden State Warriors.
Yeah, I think you're talking Wiggins, Schroeder, Kuminga, and then like one of those minimums to make the money work at the very, because Butler does make a lot of money.
He does.
What would it look like there, though? That's the hard thing for me to imagine right now. Like, would Butler have the ball in his hands? Would he be doing some of that two-man game stuff that we've seen with, Draymond and Curry? Would he be playing off the ball a little more, trying to figure out how to do that? Like, I can't picture it in my head, like what a Butler, Green, Curry team looks like.
I mean, offensively, Draymond and Bam Adebayo are not that dissimilar in terms of wants to have the ball, pick and roll playmaker, can push it in transition, make a play, really good in the short roll. Obviously, Draymond is not like a lob catching threat with who can space the floor vertically like Bam can. But I think there's some similarities there. And then like, honestly, like if Steph and Buddy Hield, Buddy Hield's been like starting recently, that's the spacing right there. That's terrific. I mean, his gravity is still second to none, flying off screens. Like, people are still petrified of him, and he creates so many wonderful opportunities for everybody. So like, clear the floor and have like a Jimmy Steph two-man game, empty corner pick and roll. Like, good luck guarding that, regardless of who has the ball in their hands. But I just think Jimmy's super smart, and he plays the right way. He doesn't force things, but when it's time to do stuff, like, give him the ball, and he can isolate on just about anybody and either get to the free throw line or hit a big shot. Like, so I still have a lot of faith in Jimmy as a guy in the league. And Steph is obviously still like playing like an MVP candidate. So I think that fit issues are a little overblown there. I think it would be pretty tough to stop.
I'd be excited to see it. Do want to talk some Celtics before you get out of here, but let's shout out the Game Time app, and it is a game night in Boston. So you want to go see the Bulls, you want to go see the Celtics back in action. They're going to be on the road for a little bit after this if you're not, in that Christmas game next week. Or if you are interested in getting some early looks at those Christmas prices, go over there, download the app, create an account. They have flash zone deals going on all the time. I'm sure there's some great Patriots prices too if you want to go see them the last couple of weeks of the year, see Drake May. All that's available over at the Game Time app, and more concerts, events. You can get panoramic views of your seats, which are huge for concerts. In my case, whenever I'm trying to get tickets to a venue I've never been before, I love that feature over there. And right now, if you use the code CLNS, you can get $20 off your first purchase over there. Terms apply. Go check out the Game Time app today. So what do we talk about with the Celtics? I've been trying to figure this out all year. Too many threes, right? Are they breaking the league? I don't want to do that thing.
Yeah.
But I'll ask you this. Are they unbeatable? Barring major injury or catastrophe, are they unbeatable this year?
That's a good question. And I think a fair one. I think their ceiling is higher than every other team's. And I don't want to say unbeatable because I have a lot of respect for several teams in the Western Conference. The Thunder look great. I think the Thunder's defense can be really disruptive, and some might argue, some might be correct, that they would have the best player in that series with Shea. But like at the same time, beating Boston 4 times if they are healthy, and Al Horford looks like he did in last year's playoff run, and Porzingis is healthy for the whole thing as he was not last season. I just have so much confidence in everybody on the team, and there's a reason why they are a little bit boring. When I watch them play, I'm looking for things that are different from last year, and I'm looking for I mentioned Jalen before, and to me, what is really scary if you're another team in the league is I'm noticing things in Jalen that I've never really seen before, and they're reflected in the numbers. I think 2 big areas for him in terms of improvement are the free throws and his playmaking. And I think his free throw rate is up 10 percentage points from what it was last season. There have been, not to get too statistically wonky with you, but there have been 7 games this season where he's attempted at least 10 free throws in a game. And last year, all of last year, 5 games where he had at least 10 free throw attempts. And you could say a lot of that is because of Porzingis' injury for sure, but 7 games, it's already a career high. 7 games with 10 free throw attempts for Jalen, already a career high, averaging 6.2. Drawing fouls, I think he draws the 15th or 14th most fouls, period, per 100 possessions in the entire NBA, which is more, he draws more fouls than Jason Tatum. When Jalen's on the court without Tatum, they're better than when Tatum's on the court without Jalen, which is a stark departure from these 2 being teammates pretty much through their entire tenure. So I think that's a big part of just Jalen, obviously bigger, stronger. That's been a storyline, but I feel like he's more patient. He's more confident, and you're seeing that more fluid and really seeing the game in a way that, going to the playmaking thing. He's 6th in hockey assists this season or something, as many hockey assists as James Harden. That's really impressive, high level stuff. And his assist rate is up above 20% for the first time in his career right now, I believe. So I think he's making smart decisions with the ball in his hands. He obviously benefits from having all this space around him. But Like, he leads the team in net rating. He leads the team in net point differential. Like, last year they were much better with when Jalen was on the bench than not. And this year they suffer when he's on the bench. Not suffer because they're still great regardless, because they're such a great team. But so that's like one dude who I just always am looking for. Like, I'm looking for noticeable improvements from him. And I know that his true shooting is like below league average for the first time since 2019 or something like that. And I don't really care. Like, I don't care that Drew Holiday is shooting 33% from behind the 3-point line. Like, I don't, just nothing about, like the starting five. I know I'm rambling. I apologize, Bobby, but like the fact that the Kristaps Porzingis starting five, they played 4 games this year together, I think, and they have like a negative, maybe 5 games, and they have like a negative net rating. Like, I don't care. Like, the offense is bad. I don't care. Like, I just think that this team is it's got answers for everything, and it's super deep. We haven't even mentioned Peyton Pritchard's name yet. He's going to win 6th man of the year in all likelihood. Jason Tatum's going to finish top 3, top 4 for MVP. Yeah, like, they've done they're 21-5, and they didn't have Kristaps Porzingis for most of the season. Really good team. Just like again, apologies for rambling, but like, they're playing these lineups that have, 2 bigs in them that are probably never going to play in a playoff series. And, that skews the data also negatively. So yeah, I guess like if they're healthy, yeah, they might be unbeatable. Like, maybe I'll just change my answer on the fly.
That's how I'm starting to feel. And yeah, the West is a huge wrinkle because you have no clue who's going to come out of there. And they're probably unbeatable in the East. And this, to keep the Jalen conversation going, I'll add the defense to it too. And I know this started last year because his career was going in a weird direction defensively in 23, where he's making these, even back to 21. Like, I just remember all these different plays where he's making mistakes off the ball or just falling asleep. And you're like, what happened to this guy defensively? This is from Forsberg to start this year, Chris Forsberg. Just astounding numbers, him defending the other team's stars. And he's doing that most nights. The Bucks game, the last Bucks game, there's a great moment where he just picks up Lillard full court and knocks him off the ball. He's guarding a variety of different types of players here, and the numbers are just astounding. And they were ridiculously low opponents overall shooting against them to begin this year. He's become their energizer defensively too, the guy who just powers them on the end. Because I think their defense sways based on how much they want to play, how bored they are, those type of things. And he's just taken on that responsibility of, I'm going to go guard the best player. Sometimes I'll pick up full court. Pritchard's done that a little bit too there. So I want to give him a lot of credit for his defensive turnaround too, because it wasn't looking good for him on that end a couple of years ago. And I thought he set the tone in a lot of ways going into last year, saying we got to become a defensive team again after that weird first year without Ime. So I'll give him credit for that too. The West.
Can I just say about it? To your point, I feel like, the officiating has changed in the NBA this season, and it started towards the end of last year. They're allowing a lot more physical play.
You think he's taking advantage of that?
Yeah, I do. I have that like in my notes when I watched the Celtics play. Like, there was one play against the Pistons recently where he anticipated Cade Cunningham and beat him to the spot. Cade went behind the back with his dribble, and Jalen anticipated, cut him off, stole the ball, and went the other way. And it was very physical. Like, I think Cade fell over. Like, it's just one of those plays where, like, 2 years ago, that's a foul. Like, they're blowing the whistle instantly. So I feel like his physicality, the things that they allow a lot of handsy on-ball defenders to get away with right now benefits the defense. And I think that's good, frankly, for watching the game. And it's really good for someone like Jaylen Brown.
You mentioned the Thunder, and it feels like that's going to be the finals. I'm going to give a lot more credit to the field in the West, because I think it could just get so, like, Dallas, Oklahoma, I think would be a very difficult series again for Oklahoma, just like it was last year. But, Chet takes a step. I love Hartenstein there. I mean, he's just been a seamless fit into what they needed. And then, they had the weird cup finish the other day, but who cares? I feel like that's going to be the finals. I do feel like that's the one team that could push them to the brink, and they just play this style. They're so fast, and Memphis did it a little bit 2 weeks ago where they're spreading you out. There's these quick guards. They're driving by you. They're
I love Memphis.
taking mid-range shots, all those different things comfortably. Cleveland, I think, is interesting in that aspect too. But Oklahoma's got the size too. Like you might have to play Horford and Porzingis a lot next to them if they're going to go Chet, Hartenstein. I'm almost just anticipating that being the finals, and I can't wait to start talking about it because I do think it's the first team, obviously a year plus here that could actually beat the Celtics. So a lot's going to have to go right in both conferences for that to end up happening here. But you do think there's a scenario where Oklahoma, if they're healthy, if they make it out of the West, that they could beat the Celtics in a championship?
Yeah, they definitely could. I wouldn't pick them to do so. But particularly if they have home court, and
yeah, it's actually a close race.
Yeah, and
the Celtics somehow might not have home court in the East, which is still kind of crazy the way it's going.
I mean, I don't want to disrespect Cleveland, so I should mention them. I think you just did, but just I want to see Cleveland in a playoff. Like I want to see what Cleveland does in the first round to their opponent, because I like a lot of their players. I like how they play together. The regular season is just not the postseason, and a lot of the questions that we've had about this team, in terms of their spacing, in terms of their defensive versatility, could come to bear in the first round, or just like in a setting like that. So I want to watch them. We also didn't mention the Knicks, and I don't think the Knicks are. I think the Knicks are really good, but I don't think that the Celtics are sweating them at all.
No.
But the thing about the Thunder, going back to that, is just we have not seen a minute of Chet and Hartenstein. You mentioned that dynamic duo, the big dudes down low. They haven't played together yet because they've been hurt. So, their defense has been historically great, and we haven't seen what may be their most intimidating, physically imposing look that they have. So that's really scary to think about. They're really good. So yeah, I would definitely give them a shot to beat the Celtics in a 7-game series, particularly if they emerge from the Western Conference. I will say though, your point about the field, I kind of agree. I think, the Minnesota Timberwolves are sneakily getting things right on the defensive end. I think they're top 5 right now. And they haven't really even clicked offensively through a significant stretch here. And so
that's the 1-8 right now, huh?
Yeah, which is out. Yeah, that's tough because Anthony Edwards, I just think he goes up a level in the postseason, and that is someone.
And imagine if it's Denver, Oklahoma. I know they have Hartenstein now, and that helps, but that's still daunting.
Yeah, no one wants to play Jokic. Nobody
yeah.
And if Jamal Murray is healthy, good luck, honestly. And you mentioned the Grizzlies. I picked the Grizzlies to win the West this season before the season started, and I like them a lot. And I think that their depth and the looks that they can give you and how they're playing offense with their new coaching staff has been it's blitzed the whole league. So
that was as impressive as I've seen a team coach against Boston over the last 2 years here, what they did to Holiday in that game and the way they just schemed it up. And I know Boston was on the 5th game in 7 nights, but that was as thrown off as I've seen the Celtics in 2 years.
Yeah, that was a really fascinating game and a really fascinating call by Taylor Jenkins to do that defensively. How many points did Memphis score in that game though? 128, 130. They really they put the ball
127, 121.
Yeah, they put the ball in the basket in that game too. I know everyone was talking about Drew Holiday missing 16 3-pointers, but Memphis's offense is
Jackson
serious.
Went crazy at the end of that game. Just floaters over everybody.
He's really good. He's really good. He's really good. He's an all-star candidate for sure. But yeah, I think the West is loaded, and there's several teams that can come out of that would not that would not surprise me. And, we mentioned a bunch of teams in the East, but I do think I think Boston's really good, and they're almost boring to talk about because I feel like even the lulls that we see with them, it doesn't matter. Like, just get them to the playoffs and beat that team in a 7-game series. Like, it's really, really hard given all the different ways that they can beat you.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the 1-8 in the East right now is Boston, Indiana. I guess that would be interesting based on how that went last year, but not quite the same. Last thing on the Celtics before I let you go. Yes, what's different about them this year? I guess the big thing's Pritchard, right? Like, what happened there? And I've been a Pritchard guy since they drafted him. I liked what he did last year. He faded a little bit in the playoffs outside of those loud half-court heaves in the later stages there, but now he looks indispensable. And that actually is one of the things, to go back to that Memphis game. They closed with Pritchard over Holiday. They did that against Indiana earlier in the year. Mm-hmm. I know you said a couple minutes ago that you're not concerned about Holiday's 3-point shooting dip here, but as Pritchard starts to play 30 minutes every night because, guys are in and out and there's rest and all that stuff, and he just seems to be more indispensable to what they're doing offensively, and he just won't miss. That is going to be an interesting rotation decision late in some of these games. Like, their only one last year was Porzingis Horford, and Porzingis ended up missing most of the playoffs anyway, so they really didn't have to make that decision too much. But I do think there's going to be some Holiday or Pritchard closing lineup questions late in this season if it keeps going the way that it is right now.
There could be, but that's like a really good problem to have, right?
Yeah.
Like, it kind of speaks to your depth and all the different ways that you can overwhelm your opponent. But yeah, Pritchard's numbers I don't even want to get into them because they're so crazy and I could go on forever, but it is like, it's not out of nowhere. I mean, before the season, I thought that he could win 6th man of the year. And
he had a crazy preseason too. Yeah.
Yeah. And you saw some of the stuff. I mean, I just remember watching in Abu Dhabi, like him hitting like a bunch of step back threes against the Nuggets and me being like, okay, like I've seen him do that before, but they were taken with a lot of confidence, and he hit one the other night. I forget who it was against, but it was like, like that was the ability to create space at this level while knowing that the opponent is like, okay, Peyton Pritchard's now on the scouting report. He's someone we have to worry about. Like, do not lose him in transition. Do not, put 2 on the ball when he sets the screen, because we can't even do that anymore, because if he pops for 3, like, we're dead in the water. So he's just, I don't even know what to say about him. He's been tremendous, and I don't even know who's like close to competing with him for 6th man of the year as it stands. Yeah,
and he wasn't on the radar, at least from like a betting odds standpoint at the beginning of the year. So it's pretty crazy that he's run away with it here. That's it for the Celtics. They've just been amazing. They're going to play the Bulls a couple games here coming up. Sixers, we'll see who shows up for that game on Christmas next week from Philadelphia. I hope it's a real game. I mean, the schedule hasn't been great. The opponents haven't been great for Boston so far. So I'm really excited. January is going to open up with Minnesota, Houston, Oklahoma City, Denver. Probably the hardest road trip I've ever heard of. So there's their test, and they've fully rested for it because they've played like 2 games in 2.5 weeks here. So do you have any Cup thoughts? Do you care?
Does
a team like Boston just benefit from banging out of that thing and resting for 2 weeks, or is like the Milwaukees and Oklahomas of the world going to actually get something out of that?
I think the do you benefit from rest angle is pretty interesting. As just a viewer, I'm personally confused by who's in what group, like throughout the whole group stage or whatever. So I don't even understand the standings, and I'm too lazy to look it up. And then, like, I'm someone who loves regular season NBA basketball as it is. So I don't need this. I personally don't need it. If it's here, that's cool. I'm going to watch it. I'm going to enjoy it. But I can't take it seriously as a concept until the winner takes it seriously. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if the Milwaukee Bucks aren't going to celebrate, then why would anyone care? So that was interesting to see. But yeah, it's just a thing, and I'll watch it, and I'm pretty indifferent about its significance, I guess I would say.
He's Michael Pina, good friend of the show, good friend of the network here. Appreciate him stopping by. Check out his Rockets piece over on The Ringer, as well as Jalen Johnson piece that came out today as well. He's really exciting. That team is, dark horses in the East. They're a fun one. And they beat the Celtics to knock them out of this cup thing without Trae Young, which was really impressive early in the year. But they do seem different this year, which, I talk to Lauren Williams all the time, who covers them, and she's like, I can't, I'm not going to say whether this is good or bad, because every time I say it's one thing, it goes the other way. But he actually seems to be making them different this year, which that could be a challenging second round series for Boston. So I'm excited about them.
Love Jalen Johnson. Thank you for letting me plug the story. He had a triple-double in that game against the Celtics that they won without Trae in Boston. Pretty important stuff, pretty big time stuff. So yeah, I like watching him a lot. I like the direction that the Hawks are going in finally. But more importantly, just thank you so much for having me, Bobby. This was a blast.
Yep, no doubt. And we'll be back tonight post game after Celtics Bulls. Bulls gave the Celtics a good run last time they played them. So we'll see what they're able to muster tonight, and we'll talk to you then. Thanks, Michael.